Welcome to That Entrepreneur Life, a podcast about entrepreneurship that takes you from idea to launch and beyond. Each week, your hosts, Andrew Lees and Clint McPherson, discuss different business topics aimed at adding value to any entrepreneur's journey.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of That Entrepreneur Life. I'm Andrew Lees, and I'm here with my co-host, Clint McPherson. What's up, brother?
Not much, man. What is up, everybody? I'm excited to be here for another episode, guys. And with that said, let's go ahead and kick this thing off by welcoming our special guest today, Rom Raviv, to the show. What's going on, brother?
What's up, man? Really excited to be here. Thank you for having me on.
All right, it's an honor to have you on the show, man. But before we launch and everything, it's important to just take a few seconds and introduce yourself and tell our listeners what you do.
Sure. So like you said, my name is Rom Raviv. I host a top 100 business podcast called Spreading Success. And I also, because of that, created a podcast editing agency called Podblade. And I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later. I'm 19 years old, still in school, and just grinding right now. That's really it.
Young Thundercat doing the damn thing, right? That's what's up, awesome. Man. I love it, dude.
Yeah.
So Ron, man, with that said, let's before we get into Podblade and everything around that and the podcasting services and then your success that you're having, especially with your podcast. And I know you kicked that thing back up, but can you take us back to where your entrepreneurial journey started and what it is about entrepreneurship that you're passionate about, brother?
Yeah. So for me, I mean, my dad was always an entrepreneur. He does a lot of real estate. And for me, it's kind of two different sides of the spectrum. So my mom was very 9 to 5. My dad was very entrepreneur, and my parents are divorced. So I actually live with my mom. So it's kind of weird how I actually ended up going with the other side of the family. But for me, I always stood out. I always wanted to be different. And this is not in a cocky way. It's just sometimes I like to be unique and different, even if it means I'm a little bit more weird. But that's just how I always was. I never kind of went with the crowd. And so I feel like that kind of allowed me to explore new things. And it started really when I was 15 or 16, listening to Gary Vee. I saw a lot of his videos on Instagram, and I didn't really believe it was possible to do this whole entrepreneurship thing because everywhere around you is just college, then get a 9 to 5 job, and then just live your life and then retire. And for me, there was no other way around that because I was so by the books. As a kid, I was, perfect grades, never did anything, against the rules or rebellious. So it was just a new perspective that it kind of allowed me to gain. And since then, I've just been doing a lot more research, been trying out different ventures, and obviously what allowed me to get to where I am today.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's a really cool, it's an interesting background where you have, you get to see what it's like to be an entrepreneur, you get to see what it's like to kind of have a 9 to 5. And, from both of your parents, you get a feel for what you really like, what you like out of both of those lifestyles. And I think it's really cool that you started so young to actually take action. That's the thing. A lot of people wait a really long time. They're like, I'm not sure. I'm not really ready to start something. I don't know enough about whatever it is. And they don't take action. And then you get sucked into, hey, I got to pay the bills. And before you know it, it's you're decades down the road, and then finally, and then it's never too late. So I'll never say that, but that's for sure. But I think it's really cool that you're starting young.
Yeah, man. I think for me, I was not exposed, right? Like my parents, when I was growing up, living paycheck to paycheck, right? So but it was more of the 9 to 5. My dad being a UPS driver, delivering packages, and then transferring over to drive a semi truck, and just seeing that, and just seeing how hard he's working on a daily basis. And then for me, seeing my mom, she worked very little, and then just stayed at home. Right. And so I never really got to see the entrepreneurial side of anything. And so I wasn't, even though I felt like I had, it wasn't a lemonade stand, it wasn't any of that, but I always felt different. And I was like, man, I got to do something different, right? I did the same thing. I went through the same journey as you, right? Going to school, getting good grades, just, hey, man, basically being indoctrinated into the system, I call it, right? Like everybody goes, they teach you to, in that specific point in time, to do that specific thing, right? And then when you get out 4 years later, especially in college, for me, that's not even relevant anymore because a lot of that information is outdated. And then you need experience. And then it's like, I went and got a degree for no reason because now this grind that is like, oh, you need a degree, you'll get a job right away. And then it's like, no, experience is needed. So people without degrees that had the experience were getting jobs before I was getting jobs, right? So it's cool that at a young age, man, you were able to take action, like Andrew said, and make it happen, bro.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for me, I still am going to college, so I'm still trying to make the most out of it, mostly because I have a full scholarship. So that's really, no student debt. That's kind of the main thing that a lot of people are worried about. So for me,
Mm-hmm.
I go to a business school in the city. I commute, I take the train, and it's fun for me. So it's not really that big of a commitment, and I like doing it. So I'm almost done. So
That's
I'll be
awesome.
I'll be on my way.
Yeah, it's smart. It's smart. You have that, that the double threat of, of having the experience of building the experience on your own, but then also, having a more formal education, which it's really smart to have that to fall back on at the very least, and going to you already you already have a really good idea of what you want to learn, right? So a lot of people go to college and they're ready to play beer pong and chug some beers and have some fun, and that's all awesome. But they might not really know what they want to study, and then they get 4 years down the road and tons of debt. And was it really worth it? But if you're like going in with a scholarship, zero debt, that's awesome. And then knowing going in exactly what you want to focus on, that's the way to do it. And not many people know that, but if you can figure that out, it at the end of high school, at least before you go to college, that's really helpful.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I'm majoring in digital marketing, and so I know it's not as up to date as like, an online course from like someone who's already doing it, but it's the best I could do for a college situation. And so I'm glad that Baruch, which is a college I go to, even offers a digital marketing. So it's like internet marketing, obviously not Facebook ads and funnels, not there yet, but at least the
Right.
fundamentals, which I think is better than doing finance or accounting, at least for me, for what I'm trying to do, especially with Podblade and the podcast. So I tried to make the most out of it, and it's been working ever since.
Yeah, that's huge, man, because it's helping you set that foundation and continue to cross over because, right, you already have a digital platform in Podblade and you already have a business established there, right? But it's also going to help you expand that and really know, again, the fundamentals and foundations of more of a broad spectrum of things, which is cool, right? And I don't regret going to college, but it's like at the end of the day, it's like, dude, I'm a business administration management, right? And I was like, I'm going to go get this job. And it was like, I don't want to do that, right? Like, I don't want to work for somebody else. And after my pursuit in the military and doing that, and now I'm out, and it's just like, bro, serving under, toxic leadership, and then also being under bosses, outside of that, and just, man, bro, like entrepreneurship's where it's at. And if you have the flexibility or freedom to do it, man, like you at a young age, man, instead of waiting until like you're 30, when was it? When I was 35 or 33 or something when I got in. So 36 now, and it's just like, dude, it's a big difference, right? So my learning curve has to come a lot quicker than yours, right? You got a lifetime to make mistakes. I'm like double your age, and I'm like, bro, I got to make it happen now.
Yeah, exactly. So Rom, you're big into podcasting, obviously. You have your own podcast, which is really cool, and you have Podblade, which is an editing app, or you edit other people's podcasts, right? It's a really nice streamlined service that we use and we love it. And you talk about the triple threat of podcasting. Can you explain what that is? And is a podcast a good part of content marketing for any business?
Yeah, I think definitely it's extremely important because just kind of going through the triple threat, there's different terminologies for it, but essentially what you're able to do is you're able to turn a podcast content, especially if you record the video just like we are on Zoom, you're able to take that and you're able to turn it into a YouTube video, a podcast, Instagram stuff, Twitter stuff, LinkedIn stuff. And that's exactly what I do, right? So I record something like this, and the editing team at Podblade takes it and they turn it into a YouTube video, full-length video, completely edited. I have the audio version. So now I'm already on 2 platforms. And then I go to the social platforms, obviously YouTube, but it's not really as socially platforms in terms of like Twitter and the Instagram, like the quick content. So I turn it into micro content on Instagram. So I have a caption social media video and a quote card. And then Twitter, I post the same caption social media video quote card. LinkedIn posts the same caption video quote card, and Facebook page. So I have all these different streams now. And LinkedIn is actually doing really, really well for me, surprisingly, because, you know, the algorithm is actually in favor of putting out good content rather than Instagram that's shadow banning everyone and just not giving them the percentage they deserve, even if they have like 100,000 followers. So that's just a little tip I've realized. But yeah, overall, it's just, you can just use this content onto so many platforms. I'm not sure if you guys are in the Podblade Facebook group, but we post group coaching calls. We go live on the group, and we now taking those, we're making YouTube videos, we're making capture social media videos, making quote cards, making audiograms. And that's just our whole content marketing system in just one video a week. And that's a lot of what Gary Vee preaches, but you're just able to repurpose the content in so many different ways with something like a podcast.
We're definitely in the group, and I've been following it. I don't know how Andrew's been paying attention, but yeah, I've been following it, man. And I think what y'all do is gold. I mean, even stumbling upon it, I've had multiple connections with other individuals. You know, being able to say, hey, I can edit your podcast. Hey, I can offer this service. But then I was at Podfest 2020 and I heard about Podblade. And I think even before that, I heard about y'all from somebody just that used you or leveraged you. And so I was like, yeah, I'll check it out, man. And then I saw, oh, you want to make it affordable. You want to make it like all this stuff that all the points that are good selling points are on your website, and things that are like, man, definitely let me try these cats out. And then having you edit, I think I just did the single episode, right, for like $20 a month at the time, or the $20 per episode, whatever it was. And then so I had the first 2 done before I did before we decided to do the monthly or subscription. But it was more like, look at what they're offering for this price, man. I mean, dude, and how much time it saves me and Andrew, right? To not even have to think about it. The only thing we have to do is record and then make sure we get your team the information. Once your team has the information, man, it's like a wrap. And then it's like, boom, hands off. And it's gold.
Yeah, for me, I mean, that's the goal. That's why we did it. I was struggling with my own podcast. I couldn't afford an editor for $200 to $300 an episode, but at the same time, I couldn't spend 5, 6, 7 hours editing all the social content. And I'm not a graphic designer, I'm not a writer, and I'm not an editor. So it would take me a lot longer and it wouldn't be as good. So for me, that's really early on in my show, that's what I was conflicting. And so what ended up happening is Apple was working with an editor already, and he was kind of explaining me that she was already trained, and he allowed me to leverage her services. And what ended up happening is we realized that, wait, we can really help a lot of people with something like this. So we just ended up scaling it, and the rest is history.
Yeah, that's pretty dope. You basically took, by explaining that, the next question was going to be evolved around that, right? By talking about your inspiration behind Podblade and how you got started. And that makes perfect sense. But is there anything else that you did before Podblade that transferred over into your inspiration to start Podblade outside of podcasting, right? Because again, dude, Podblade fills a huge void for podcasters, or for frustrated podcasters like I was. I had a sports podcast before I teamed up with Andrew here on the College Sports Hour. And brother, I was spending countless hours, and I'm pretty decent at editing, right? But brother, I'm not fast with it, right? So I'm sitting here like, oh man, this episode sounds legit. But how many hours I spent, my eyes were like numb. I was like, it felt like they were bleeding at times because I'm staring at the screen so much. And I'm like, man, what was your inspiration behind all of that though?
Yeah. So the way that I originally met Apple was through Instagram DMs. We chatted a little bit. This was when I was just getting started with my podcast. He already had an established Top 100 Business Podcast. I was just getting started. I saw him on Instagram. I thought I'd hit him up. And so we started talking, and he started giving me some advice and little tips, and then it started getting a little bit more intense. He would give me some insider, how to reach out to people. And he actually gave me some of his course materials for free because he saw that I was taking action on every one of the things that he would give me. Like, for example, he gave me a sheet on how to reach out to different influencers, and I did it, and I got these influencers on my show. And he's like, okay, you're actually listening to what I'm doing. Because for the most part, if someone else gets information, they just ignore it and they're like, thanks, and they don't take action on it. You saw I was very consistent with that. And so we built that relationship. And then from there, that's when I started picking up my show a little more. And that's when I was kind of struggling. I went through Fiverr. I had one person do every part, and it was not only more it actually turned out to be more expensive than Fiverr, which is supposed to be an inexpensive thing, but it also allowed me to not really even allowed me, but it just forced me to struggle with having 7 different people work on my show. So I had one person for the thumbnail, one person for the audiogram, one person for the audio editing, one person for the video. And it was just crazy because there was no team that could do it all. And so that was really the struggle. And then they have other clients they're working with, and they have to rememorize how my style of the show. And that's why for us, we do a personal podcast manager who really focuses on, a few shows at a time, and it's on a recurring basis. So it's not like, hey, 1 episode a month here, and then in 3 months, hey, remember that thing I did 3 months ago? Can you do the same thing? They're not going to remember it. And so that's why we like to do it on a subscription, which also makes them a lot more confident and a lot more able to stick to a schedule. And then from there, we're able to continue riding it. And essentially that's really how I got started. It was from a need that I had, and I knew that if I needed it, and I was really desperate because I was going to quit my show, and I really like doing my show. Obviously I love podcasting. This is what I do all day. So that really was the passion. That's really how I came to where I am right now.
Yeah, it's awesome. And that streamlined approach, the website really, communicates that really well. You go onto the website and it's just like, this feels like I'm going to get, a lot done for my podcast in one spot. And, it's simple. That information is really easy, easy to digest, and it makes a lot of sense. That's really cool because it can get expensive to do it, another way. It's very time consuming to do it yourself. I've got a friend who has a podcast about, he's an audio engineer, and he and another guy have a podcast. And I actually mentioned Podblade, but he was like, well, I'm actually an audio engineer, so I kind of need to do, this is like my advertising for my own product, So besides maybe an audio engineer, there's no reason to not use something like Podblade.
And I mean, even audio engineers, we've partnered with podcast producers who want to be able to scale their company, right? So if they're working with 10 podcasts, so like, let's just say an example, and it's like 2 people on a team, they have to work all these hours just editing the podcast. They can't focus on growing a company. They can't focus on marketing it. They can barely even handle the work that they already have. And so they're stuck in a place where, in a plateau where they can't move and they can't advance. If anything, they're just going down, and they're getting drowned in their work. So for us, that's kind of what we've been able to do. So even audio engineers and podcast producers, we've been able to kind of make deals and partner with them in order to get them to grow their business as well.
It saves some time, right? I mean, that's the cool thing about it's like, okay, even though you're an audio engineer, I mean, dude, how much time is it freeing you up to continue to record, to continue to do what you're good at, right? And it's not that they might not be good at editing and doing all this different stuff, but it's like, man, look at all the components. Like when you're talking about the triple thread of everything, it's like, look at all the different components and how many pieces of content you can create, especially if you do the video side of it, right? Kind of throws everybody off when they get on with us. And I think we probably need to verbalize it a little better. Is like, they're like, oh, we're doing video? I'm like, yeah, bro. I was like, we're doing video because we're in 2020 now. This is not podcasting when it started. And we kind of want to leverage it to like say, okay, yeah, majority of this is going to be audio. But we want to leverage social media. We want to leverage YouTube to a certain extent, and make sure that the forms that we come out with are the different components, and that we have all the bases covered. So people that are visually more appealing, that want to see us and interact with us, or like, hey, man, I want to see your face, not just listen to you on some audio recording, right? Like Joe Rogan style. And so that's the cool thing, man. And like, I appreciate what y'all do, brother, because, dude, man, like I said, dude, I was struggling, and I'm like, man, I felt like the lone survivor out here. Like, this sucks. And it makes you want to quit podcasting. Like you're so excited about podcasting, you're doing it and you're like, man, okay, now I got all this shit or like to edit. And I was like, I don't want to do this no more, man. 25 episodes in, I'm like, I'm done. Like I'm hanging the boots up. Get out of here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Rom, you were just talking about scaling, how Podblade can help, people scale their podcasts and their businesses. What did you guys, was there like one or two things that you did that really accelerated, the growth of Podblade itself? Like, were there a couple, mechanisms or, growth hacks or whatever you want to call it that really helped you guys explode?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people, when they try to scale a company and they think, all right, it's time to go to the next level, they forget to fix or adjust their foundation and their training systems and their processes. And so before we went crazy, we took a step back and we're like, okay, let's make this system, this training, onboarding, scaling, let's make the system perfect first, and then start reaching out to potential partners. So a lot of people reach out and they don't have a good infrastructure, and then they let the partners down and they don't know what the hell they're doing, and then they're back to square one and they have a bad reputation now. So I think what we did, we made a ton of training and we did a ton of onboarding. We made our systems very clear, and that's what's allowed us to kind of grow. So I think a lot of people really skip out on that, especially when they feel like they're at a point where they want to grow and scale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes it. Yeah, you really do have to start with that foundation. Otherwise, like you said, you're going to let people down, and it's going to get out of hand really quickly, or you're not going to. People are sometimes, I think what happens is people will reach out before they have everything figured out. They'll reach out to people and they don't have all the answers, or they don't have most of the answers, because not having all the answers is okay sometimes, but they don't have like any of the answers. And then they actually get, somebody reaches back and says, hey, I'm interested. And they're like, oh shoot, what now? I didn't think anybody was actually gonna be interested in this.
Then they lose a great opportunity that they could have, capitalized on. And then it's all about the network, right? So if there's someone that you completely flop and you don't answer any questions, if someone asks about Podblade services or any company example, they're like, oh yeah, they didn't really know what they were talking about, so you shouldn't really try them out. And then, word spreads faster than anything, especially with social media, and it kind of hinders a lot of potential stuff in the future. So it's definitely important to not make that mistake, and also have the right systems in place, not only to continue to doing what you're doing, but to also to be able to expand. And like what we do with podcast editing, we've created training systems that allow us to scale when the volume is there. So that's why we partner with different people. We have different partnership ventures, white labeling, affiliate marketing. And when somebody comes on, we're able to tell them, hey, we don't have a maximum capacity, because instead of just bringing on a ton of people or just working with a ton of volume to begin with, we created in-depth systems and process and step-by-steps, so that if you bring us, doesn't matter what amount, or let's just say 20 podcasters next week, we'd be able to adjust within a week or two, rather than another company who has to start this whole hiring process. They're like, okay, we don't really have a system. How are we going to go find these people to fulfill it? We don't have any training. So are we just going to spend a few weeks training them, and then from there, are they even aware of our company culture? Do they know how the portal works, for an example, just for us? And so you get left in the dust. And so that's kind of what we did. And like I said, we took that step back, and it's been proving pretty vital ever since.
I like what you're all doing right now with the dashboard too, because I'm messing around with it, right? It throws me off a little from time to time when something changes. But even the changes that you're doing is not something that's like so out there that it just looks, everything's starting to look better, right? I mean, instead you're starting to throw some good graphics on there. Everything's starting to make sense. I think initially when I jumped on, it was like, okay, they can do all of this, awesome, but it wasn't as and I'm not trying to throw you all under the bus, but it wasn't as broken down as it is now, right? Again, you were refining the system, you were continuing to perfect it. But the cool thing about it is, even when you launch Podblade, I don't think you had a perfect thing, right? And over time, you've refined that. And as it continues to get stronger and better, your services are starting to expand. I'm starting to see that you're doing websites, podcasting websites, and all this stuff, man. So it's really blowing my mind what you're doing on like how fast you're scaling everything, right? Because again, it probably just started off with the one single podcast, right? Because it's easy. It's like $20. Hey, that's a no-brainer. let me go ahead and get this thing edited. And then how you're taking in the direction you're taking it from, like the social media captions with, you know, having that portion of it, man, I'm like, this is dope. Because every time I see it, you're sitting there saying, okay, here's an example of what it's going to look like, right? Obviously, you got to have an imagination because it's your example or your team's example of whether it's your podcast or whatever it is, or Apple. And then you start seeing, it's like, okay, I understand it, right? And then I definitely want that. There's everything I come across, I'm like, add, right? Like push the button, add it. Yes, I want that because I don't want to do it. So that's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's really why we did it. And we have been able to add new services based off of not only what we think, because we are podcasters. That's what I love about this. A lot of the people that create these podcast editing companies, they're audio engineers, right? They're not podcasters. They don't know what podcasters actually need, what they don't need, and it's a waste of their money and their time. And so we like to pitch it as a perspective of growth as well as doing the bare minimum. And so the podcast editing companies, they do the bare minimum of just, you know, audio, maybe a show notes, but we're out here saying, here's an audiogram, here's capture social media video, because we understand that it's more than just an audio game. It's a social media game. It's a YouTube game. And that's why we've been able to kind of cultivate these services and adding writing to it, like the transcriptions, the blog posts, because we know the importance of the writing side of things as well. So that's why we try to be a full service company while still trying to be affordable. Because like I said, I was there. I know my budget at the time, which was practically zero, but I knew what it was like. And I know that a lot of people are in my shoes because podcasting is not, you know, you're not making $1 million off a podcast. Podcasters are not millionaires for the most part. And so that's why we're able to make that service and to kind of fill both needs of getting the right stuff, but also getting it at the right price.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I mean, I think that sign behind you says it though, right? Time is money. I mean, come on. I mean, point blank. I mean, you're saving me time to do what I can do and focus on my main business, because podcasting, like you said, it's not always going to make people a millionaire. You're not going to always be able to monetize it right off the bat and get these huge sums of money. But when you can free your time up to focus on your core business, if podcasting is not your core business, then it helps out so much, right? Like I can get on for an hour at a time and then record a podcast, and then boom, I'm now my mind's shut off to that, and I'm focusing on doing pumping digital marketing stuff out.
Yeah, it's really important.
So Ron, man, through your entrepreneurial journey, man, what has been, obviously, right, Podblade has been, I would say a high, but I'm sure you've went through some lows trying to get that established as well. So from the highs and the lows, what has been the most difficult thing for you, brother, about being an entrepreneur?
I think for me, it was a lot of mental stuff, because for me, I started my business ventures through reselling stuff. I tried drop shipping. I lost like thousands of dollars in ads. I tried it all. If there was a way to make money online, I already know it. I've tried it 10 times at least. That's what I did in high school, by the way, when everyone else was partying. Me and my friends would look up how to make money online, try to find these little cheat code kind of ways to make money. But essentially, yeah, the hardest part for me was definitely mental, because for me, after failing so many times, or after trying so many things and not having success or really making money online, it kind of put this little hurdle in my brain that I wasn't able to get over that hurdle to make money online. I didn't think that it was possible for me to do that. I felt like no matter what I tried, I would get so close to the hurdle, but I would just never jump over it. And it wasn't until I partnered with Apple and I saw that he was doing it. He was doing another company before this, and I saw that it was really possible, and I saw that someone so close to me is able to do it. And then we started making money, and then I was like, okay, like I finally got over that hurdle, and I know that it's possible, and I know I can actually do it. And I know that sounds really cliche, but I really felt like no matter what I tried, I just couldn't get over that hurdle. And for me, it was finally Podblade and the podcast that really allowed me to feel that way. And now, obviously, just having that it's basically mental proof of concept for myself, knowing that I can really do it. And so from there on now, if there's anything else I try, I mean, I have that concept and I have the confidence in my head to know that I can definitely accomplish it.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think it's really for all of us as entrepreneurs, it's really hard before you have that proof of concept that, hey, I can actually make money at something. It's really hard to get over that hump. And it's also one thing to make some money, but it's also another thing to pay the bills and have an income,
make a business out of it.
Right, exactly. That can actually sustain you. So yeah, I think that's something that we all we all go through at some point, and multiple times too, I think. And just because something works for one business, it might not for another. But you definitely, you get better every time, right? So the next business that you launch, you're gonna be so much further ahead. You're gonna know what the pitfalls are, at least a lot of them, right? So you're gonna be able to streamline that process, make it more efficient, and get to where you want to go a lot faster. And yeah, I think that's the experience that's just absolutely invaluable. So yeah, it's really cool.
I would agree, Rom, and I think like Andrew said, we all have that hurdle, I think, when we start off, and then you start getting defeated when you don't succeed, especially if you're used to succeeding and putting things into action. And it's like, okay, man, like I'm trying all these make money fast or get rich quick schemes, whatever it is. People, it's the shiny object syndrome that really gets us sometimes. It's like, oh man, I see this person killing it, I can kill it over here too. And then you don't, and you're like, what the hell? I'm implementing or doing everything he's doing, or like I was taught, and it's not working, man. And then we all in our mind could be our worst enemy, and it's our greatest tool, right? And so when you start getting in your head that you can't be successful, that's a hard hurdle to jump back over, right? And so but it's powerful when you can get that reassurance, or when then you see somebody else succeed, and then you team up with that person like you did with Apple, and then it opens your eyes, man. Because sometimes when you're on the journey alone and a lot of entrepreneurs are, especially if you don't surround yourself with a team and have those people you can confide in, I think we can find ourselves in that a lot, and being depressed and being like, man, this sucks. This entrepreneur thing is not what I thought it was going to be, but then having that confidence is huge. So when you see that success and you're able to have that confidence, man, that's the thing that that's always helped push me when I fail. I still have the confidence that I can succeed at the end of the day, no matter what. It's like and I think it goes back to being in the military, right? Being in the shitstorm that we're in from time to time. And it's like, I'm going home, brother. Like, I don't know about y'all, but I'm making decisions, and I'm using all the tools at my disposal as the platoon leader on the battlefield right now to make sure all my soldiers come home, not just me. And I don't care if I break a law or go to jail. Like, bro, we're going home because I'm not telling anybody's mom I didn't do everything I could to bring you back home, right? And I just think eliminating all the hurdles in your way and saying, screw that, brother, I'm going to succeed no matter what. But the cool thing is you kept going until you got there, right? You could have been like most entrepreneurs out there and just pushed the pause button or just push the reset button and quit. But yeah, brother, I'm glad to see you here today, and it's more of a success story. Your journey's still going, brother. So don't worry about that.
I didn't even get started, man. And for me,
yeah, exactly.
I played a lot of the long game, and I think that's what helped me to get to a place that I'm at right now. I didn't start it for the money, and that's not even with Podblade. It's with the podcast. So initially, people my age are like, "What are you doing? You're wasting all your time. What are you doing with this podcast? You're not making any money. You're not doing anything for me." I was in it for relationship capital, obviously building your network and stuff like that. But for me, I always knew, like in the back of my head, I was like, just keep doing this podcast and an opportunity will come. Just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. And that's what happened. And I knew that if I just played it for the right reasons, the right opportunities would come. So a lot of people for drop shipping, their goal is just make a ton of money. But for me, it was like, I know the right opportunity is going to come because this is based around what I like doing. And, everything happens for a reason, and one thing led to another, and I ended up building a business around it. And now I'm kind of winning in both ways because I'm happy with the business and I'm happy with the podcast, and it's a business about the podcast. So it's like this one perfect loop, and I'm really happy doing it.
That's dope.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Well, Ron, as we I think we sit here and talk to you for a really long time. We got we could go into all kinds of things like TikTok and different social platforms. Maybe we'll do a whole episode about that at some point. But as we wrap up this episode, what is one piece of advice that you could give our listeners that could add, some value to their entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, similarly to what I just said, play everything for the long game. Do all your daily actions and all your daily habits to benefit the long term. So don't play for the short term gratification, always play for the delayed gratification. And that's what allows you to focus, and it allows you to not get distracted by these shiny things, and you stay focused, you stay in your lane, and you just not worry about what anyone else is doing. If this person's successful, this person, you cheer them on, let them do what they got to do. But for you, if you just stay in your lane and be consistent with it and just play for the long term, great things will happen if you do it consistently in the right way.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it's a really good point to stay in your lane and not let yourself get distracted by all these other things, because there are so many ways to make money out there, and there's a lot of legitimate, really great ways to make money. You can't do them all, at least not all at the same time, right? So you got to pick something, you got to double down, and if you believe in it, it's something like, I love that you got into podcasting, and what's nice about podcasting is that it's very easy to do it for the right reasons. I think, you're not, most people I don't think are getting into podcasting because they're like, they're trying to sell out to Spotify for $100 million. Not even Joe Rogan thought that, I'm sure he didn't have that in mind when he started his podcast by any means. He's trying to get that relationship capital, which you mentioned, which is, it can be so valuable and something that you don't see a return on maybe for several years. But when it, along the way, you're building these relationships and you're able to help other people, and then they're able to help you. And then you never know what kind of amazing business opportunities come out of that. Like for yourself, it was Podblade. So that's awesome. And you stick with it, and I'm sure there's going to be, plenty more opportunities. You are getting pretty old though. So you gotta
hurry up, bro.
You gotta hurry up.
I gotta make a decision. I know. Yeah. I mean, for me, the goal was to escape the 9-to-5 before I graduate. That's kind of been my thing since probably senior year of high school. So I'm like, I don't know how I'm gonna do it. I don't know when I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna do it. And I'm getting close to it. So I'm really, really excited about that. And from there, it's just playing for a long game. Like I said, especially people my age, when they're so young and they have so much potential, they always do it for the wrong reasons. And that's why a lot of them just end up failing within a year or two, because they're just playing it for the short-term money. It's the nice house, the fancy cars, the girls, and it's just so much distractions at our age that if you just be quiet, just stay in your lane, just do what you got to do, and just do it for a long time, it will pay off a lot more than any of these little short-term get rich Facebook ads, marketing courses will get you.
Yeah, I love it. It's great advice.
Man, guys, you heard it here from Rom. That's a wrap for episode 17, guys, from the both of us, Rom. We just want to thank you, man, for taking the time out of your day to join us and adding value in what we're currently doing on our podcast, brother.
Awesome. Thank you again, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.
Yeah. Guys, thank you so much for listening to That Entrepreneur Life. To learn more about what Rom is working on, check out romraviv.com. That's ROMRAVIV.com. If you have a podcast you like to edit, check out podblade.com, where Rom's team makes podcasting easy and affordable with an all-in-one podcasting editing solution. If you like what you heard today, make sure to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or any other major podcast directory. You can also find us on all the socials and on our website at thatentrepreneurlife.com.
And with that said, guys, we also want to quickly give a special shout out to our family and friends, to include all of our listeners, followers, and subscribers. If you find value in our show, guys, please consider making a small donation. Even just a few dollars helps us keep things moving along and bring value to your entrepreneurial journey. Thanks for continuing to support what we do as entrepreneurs. And don't forget, guys, to join us next week for another episode of That Entrepreneur Life.
Thanks for listening to That Entrepreneur Life podcast. Be sure to visit thatentrepreneurlife.com to join the conversation, access our show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode as we continue to add value. Until next time.